show now. Our good friend Blaine Fowler,
Uncle B,
dual threat analyst, football and basketball. Today we're talking basketball and trying to put our minds around what in the world happened last night, especially in the second half. Blaine, can you describe the personal roller coaster ride you had in watching last night's game?
Yeah, it's hard to explain. And then as soon as the game's over, well, the entire time the game's going on, I keep looking at the stat sheet. And you want to know a winning formula? Here's a winning formula. 48.3% from the field, 51.7% from three, 15 of 29, 70% plus from the free throw line, and score 90 points. If I say that this is a team that was in a game last night, they scored 90 and they had those numbers, and they held their opponent to 45% from the field, 30% from three, and their opponent only shot 65% from a free throw line, you'd say, well, they had a 99% chance of winning that, wouldn't you?
I believe that's the first game BYU lost in which they outshot the opponent by percentage from the field, three, and free throw line. All BYU had to do was allow 57 and not 62, and they win that game, Lynn, in the second half.
What they
57
needed to do
would have done it.
The little things killed them last night. And so you have to go deeper into the stat sheet to understand. I mean, we were all watching it horrified in the second half at kind of the carelessness with the basketball. And I understand that team, Ole Miss, has got quickness and they've got length. They've got very quick hands in the passing lanes. But they were fine in the first half handling it. And when they dialed up the pressure, it just seemed like BYU didn't respond mentally to that. And then that results in mistakes that are physical out there on the court. But when the points off of turnovers margin is minus 25, so Ole Miss had 25 points off of turnovers and BYU had 0. That one stat alone, you cannot win a basketball game, period. I'm surprised BYU was as close as they were. The only reason they were that close is because they literally shot lights out from three last night and scored 90 points. But minus 25 in turnovers, points off of turnovers is unbelievable. And Ole Miss took care of the ball great. They had 7 turnovers. BYU had 15. Now, 15 is not good. But if they had 12 is probably not bad for BYU. So it's not that crazy out of line. It was the type of turnovers they had, especially in the last 12 minutes of the game, where those turnovers just resulted in 3-on-1s on the other court, easy runouts, dunks, easy buckets. You know, it's one thing to turn the ball over in the half-court offense and have it roll out of bounds off of one of your guys' feet, and the other team takes it out and you set your defense. It's much more painful, and coaches call them fatal errors. When you make an error that results in a run out, it's a fatal error. It just kills you. And that's what BYU did over and over and over again. And the result was Ole Miss got 80 shot attempts up, and BYU got 50. They're plus 22, Ole Miss was in shot attempts. That makes it so you don't have to shoot a great percentage, and you can still win a basketball game, right? And to put it in perspective on the type of turnovers BYU had, in the tournament, BYU was minus 4 in turnover margin against Portland. BYU had 17 turnovers, and Portland had 13 turnovers. But BYU got 22 points off of those turnovers, and Portland only got 13. So BYU was plus 9 in points off of turnovers. Even though they lost the turnover margin battle, they were plus 9 in points off of turnovers. So it's not always just the turnovers. It's the kind of turnovers. And I just saw so many mental lapses in that second half where BYU came up just for some unknown reason, just threw the ball away, and then Mississippi just turned it into points on the other end. And that's the story of the game. Minus 25 points off of turnovers. I don't have to look at any other stat, and I can tell you why BYU lost right there.
Blaine Fowler with us on BYU Sports Nation. Blaine, you've been in locker rooms after big wins and certainly disappointing losses as a player, and you've had your kids playing games as well. What do you say to a team after going through a loss like that to get them ready to go and to try and help them recover after something that's heartbreaking and it stung so much?
Yeah, for the seniors, it's a hard thing. And so I think in the locker room after your last game of the season, you always are going to reflect back on the season that just was. Because there were a lot of great things that happened this year. A win up in Spokane for the first time is a big, big deal. Beating a top 5 team, getting to the tournament finals, Tyler Hawes breaking the record, their all-time scoring record, Kyle Collinsworth and the triple doubles. I mean, you almost have to focus on the seniors and what a great job they did, and not worry about getting the team that's coming back next year ready to go, because you got plenty of time to do that. And so you really, in that situation, just have to focus on the whole body of work for the season and tell them, hey, sometimes you just don't play well. But I'll tell you, when the guys go back and watch the tape, it's going to hurt more. Because sometimes when you're in the middle of the game, you don't really see what's going on. You know that it's slipping away, and you feel the momentum going away, and you don't. Then you go back and watch it and go, oh, my goodness, why did we just throw it away right there? And why did we just throw it away right there? And why didn't we put a body on that guy and not give up another offensive board? And so they'll go back and watch the game, and they'll be more disappointed than they were right after the game when they see that they could have controlled some of that stuff by just being a little smarter and, being more crisp with their passes. And when you're receiving a pass, come into the ball. When Ole Miss upped their intensity level defensively, BYU didn't up their focus level offensively to match it, and that's where they made. And those guys will look at that and go, "Gosh, we should have advanced in the NCAA tournament," and they'll feel bad about it. You always remember your last game if you're a senior, win or lose. You always remember it, and so those guys will remember it, and they'll remember that there were, they wish they could have done some more to get a win. I thought Tyler Haws was brilliant last night.
Absolutely.
I mean, he was amazing. He was everything he was advertised, and he was fantastic. He did everything he could, but the turnovers in the end just killed him. And you know what? Tyler had 2 turnovers. His assist to turnover ratio was positive. His shooting percentage was phenomenal. You can't fault one thing in Tyler Haws' game last night. He was fantastic. So at least he can look at that as a senior going out and go, well, gosh, I wish we could have won, but I tried to do everything I possibly could to carry this team in that one, and it just didn't work. This
is a tapeless era. Everything's digital. Otherwise, I would grab the tape, and I would burn it, break it, shoot it. I would get rid of it because I hate that game so much. BYU gave up 62 points in the second half. The Cougars are defined by what they do offensively. They dictate the pace. They run. It's a fun way to watch basketball. It really is. But what means more to BYU's success in the future, Blaine? Offense or defense?
They're always good offensively because that's the style that Dave plays and teaches and what they're committed to offensively, and they always get good shooters, right? So they're always going to be good offensively. The difference between good teams and great teams for BYU is the ones that can play defense. And we have problems this year. They really struggled to defend, especially on the interior. How many times did we see, well, it's a combination of things, did we see Ole Miss take them off the dribble, break the defense down, and get an easy pass, a little shuffle pass over for a throwdown in that second half?
I think there were 6 or 7 dunks in the second half.
Yeah, and so that's not just interior defense being slow to help. It's guys out on the perimeter staying in front of their guys just a little bit longer to make it easier, being more decisive on the interior. And I thought that BYU had made good progress toward the end of the season, but they took a step backward. What I keep telling myself and what everybody out there that's a big BYU fan needs to remember, once Eitz was hurt, or is it Eitz or Eitz? I can't even remember. Eitz. I should remember his name. He's such a good kid. He's just so gracious and such a nice gentleman. But so once he got hurt, and I knew that Davis was going to have to sit out with a transfer year, and then when Nate Austin gets out, I'm thinking to myself, well, from a talent perspective, with what BYU can put out on the floor on the inside, this is the worst team BYU is going to have from a talent perspective in the next 8 years. At that time, I thought, heck, I don't know. Can they get to an NCAA tournament? Can Dave win 20 games again? I don't know. So I need to go back and remember what my expectation was at the beginning of the year. To what they did at the end of the year, and not dwell on what they did last night, to realize that they exceeded my expectations based on what I knew they had. And you think about it, Davis, Eitz, Corbin Kafusi with a whole year of practicing being a basketball player, Emery back, Kyle Collinsworth back,
Chase Fisher.
Yeah,
Fisher back with a year now as a starter. Yeah,
Jacob Hartsock, Braden Shaw, Zach Sellius. You're gonna have a lot of talent coming.
And then the year after, Dastrup comes and Mika's back in the fold, and now Kafusi is a junior and senior, and
TJ Haas.
And so and TJ Haas comes off of his mission. So when you really look at it, once the injuries occurred at the beginning of the year, we all knew that from a talent and depth perspective, especially on the front line, this was going to be the worst BYU was going to be for the next 8 years.
And it was a 25-win team that went to the tournament.
That, to me, I think Dave Rose did a phenomenal job because of that. I think they exceeded my expectations. Now, the way they played in the last 12 games of the season raised my expectation level because I'm like, wow, they're making it happen, even playing four guards, and Corbin's figured out a way to stay on the floor. And so maybe my expectations raised a little bit. But what I need to do is go back and really realize what a phenomenal job that coaching staff did. 25 wins and an NCAA tournament appearance with the injuries they had, and it was kind of a gap year anyhow in terms of missions. And now they just start to load up every year for the next 8 years. I mean, it gets me excited to know that this staff is good enough to get 25 wins out of that team because they're going to just do nothing but move up. Now, the one thing that is that's tough is I look at the Zags, I look at Gonzaga and the WCC, and as we watch that tournament finals, I look at them and they're not getting any worse either. I can tell you that. So the Gonzaga BYU battles over the next several years are going to be ranked teams, two of the top teams in the country going at each other every year for the next several years, and that's going to be a lot of fun.
BYUtv basketball analyst Blaine Fowler with us on BYU Sports Nation, bringing us the wide-angle lens, which is much appreciated on a day like today. Blaine, if you could pinpoint one moment, one experience, one feeling from this season, what will you remember most about BYU basketball this last season?
I think the single game is the win at Gonzaga. So as a team, they were just so good. They did everything they needed to do. They defended as well as I've seen them defend all year. Offensively, they were really sharp and they executed. So if I'm picking out a game that was the marquee game of the year, that was the game. That was just huge. They played so well. It was so fun to see them play that well. But I'm gonna remember this season for what Tyler Hawes did. I'm gonna remember this season for Kyle Collinsworth. You realize that, like, we'll be talking to our grandkids and they'll say, "So tell me about what Tyler Hawes was like," because he's always going to be. Will somebody come and break that record? I don't know. Someday they might. We have been so spoiled to have Jimmer Fredette and Tyler Hawes back to back.
It was fun.
That just doesn't happen. That just doesn't happen. So I'll remember Tyler Hawes' senior season, not just because he broke the all-time scoring record, but because the way he did it, just through unbelievable work ethic and the kind of kid he is. We've all gotten to know him really well. He is just a quality young man, and it's great that he has that record. So that's what I'll remember is his senior season. And I'll also remember that as I look at it in the bigger picture, that I think Dave Rose did one of his better coaching jobs in his career. I think he did a phenomenal job this year. I really believe that.
You look at all the injuries that BYU had. You look at the roster differences, like you mentioned, that changed the season. Kyle Collinsworth with triple doubles. Hawes breaks the record. They get to the tournament. Unfortunately, they lose that game. I'm with you. I take away positives from this season. The fact that BYU didn't have a low post scorer, yet was second in the country in scoring. I am bummed today, but in the end, I'm going to remember this season pretty fondly, Blaine.
Yeah, think about what Dave did. Remember there was a period of time back in and we call it the preseason before conference play, actually all the way into conference play, where Dave and his staff were going, how are we going to do this? What are we going to do? Then we started to see the four-guard setup, and we started to see the coaching of Kafusi come through and his experience come through. And, I mean, it took them a long time to figure out how to play and how to create mismatch problems offensively. And this wasn't an easy season because it's really easy to coach a team that has an inside presence and has great guard play. Look at Gonzaga. How hard is it to put with what they've got inside? They just have monsters out there on the floor and monsters to bring off the bench, right? Then they have a great guard play around them with a combination of Wesley and Bell and Pangos. It's not that hard to figure out rotations and what you're going to do. You can run whatever you want. Every offense that you've ever designed, you can run with that group. With this group this year, they had to tailor what they were doing to a different lineup, to a completely different deal. Usually BYU's got great big wings and a post player that can give them some scoring punch and can defend in there. They literally had to play a four-guard offense a good percentage of this year, and yet they were the leading scoring team in the nation all year long. So what they did, the adjustments that they made, and then to get to 25 wins was outstanding. And so am I disappointed in the way they played in the second half last night, especially in light of the way they played in the first half? Absolutely. It's just too bad that the season had to end that way, because when you look at the season as a whole, and that's what we need to do, it was phenomenal. And the job that the staff did was outstanding. And then guess what? We just got nothing but better than this to look forward to over the next 8 years. BYU basketball is in a really, really good, healthy place right now.
The future is bright for Blaine Fowler and for BYU basketball. Blaine, thanks for the time, for the analysis. We'll talk to you again soon.